You know, I'm tuned into the Lady Charmaine live show, and I'm your host, Lady Charmaine. And as always, I got another great interview for you today. When you think of one of the most influential and iconic comedians to ever hit the stage, this comedian should come to mind. And his son is here today to talk about their prior life. And I tell you who it is coming up right after this. My guest today proclaimed his freakish life paralleled his famous father's and his namesake in many ways. A Peoria whorehouse, abuse, alcohol, and drug addiction, as well as making frequent bad decisions. However, he survived. And that's what his book is all about, a real-life story of overwhelming obstacles, surviving, and thriving. And he is here today to talk about his new book, In a Prior Life. Help me welcome to the Lady Charmaine live show, the son of the legendary late Richard Pryor, Richard Pryor Jr. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you know, absolutely. When I heard that they wanted you to come on the show, I'm like, I can't deny this because we all loved your father. So I definitely wanted to talk to you about your book today. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So first I want to say congratulations on your book, In a Prior Life. And then I wanted to know, why did you decide to release a book at this time in your life?
I think, I've tried several times over the years to write the book. In the late 90s and the mid-2000s, I tried. It just was never the right time. And I look back on it now that my mind wasn't ready for it. Mm-hmm. I wasn't ready for it. Spiritually, I wasn't ready for it. Physically, I wasn't ready for it. And I had to be at a place in my life where I was okay with who I am. Mm-hmm. And knowing how to love myself, and because I wanted to, if I was going to do a book, I was going to do it right and talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I wasn't going to sugarcoat things. So I had to be in a place spiritually and in my soul and myself. I had to be in the right type of place to be able to do that in order to be able to share those things, but also being able to receive whatever came my way after the book came out. So I had to be strong enough to be able to handle all those things, and I think it took now for those things to be able to happen.
So for you, growing up, who was Richard Pryor to you?
Richard Pryor to me was just Dad. Mm-hmm. It was my dad working at the factory. Went to work at the plant. You know, they got his lunch in the morning and went to work and came home, after work. I never saw my dad until I got a lot older on the level everyone else saw him in, because it was still always just Dad to me. Now, he had friends that worked in movies and stuff that were movie stars to me, but himself, even though he was working in the same films as them, he wasn't seen as a movie star. It was just Dad, just Pops.
Now, you had a pretty rough life as you was going into your adult life. And I wanted to talk about that because you also had your bout with drugs, because growing up you were sexually abused, and then your life also paralleled your father in many ways, especially with the addictive personalities, especially when it came to drugs. So why did you turn to drugs? How did you end up getting into that life that was similar to your father's?
I think, well, for one thing, because those are things I said I would never, ever do in my life, which I ended up doing. I think it was a lot of things of giving into peer pressure, of wanting to fit in, not being comfortable in your own skin, having to face who you are as a person. I think all those things played into me getting into the drugs. Because when you do those drugs and everything, you're thinking, I'll try this one time, I'm not going to be hooked. You're not realizing that, 2 years later, you're still doing the exact same thing. And 3 years later, you're still doing the exact same thing. And nothing's changed in your life. And you wonder why you're standing still and things aren't moving in your life. And how come things aren't working out for you? And that's when you realize, which took me even through rehabs and all those things, it still wasn't enough for me to be at my lowest point to realize I needed to change. Mm-hmm. And I think it was a thing of knowing who I was and learning to start loving myself. I think that was the process that started to change, which was years later.
Because you were also a performer as well. And there were a time in your life that you were also dressing in drag. And your father said something to you. Tell us about that.
Well, my father told me, cause I remember when even the tabloids came out, about me doing drag and all that stuff. He said, whatever I do the best of it. Always do the best at whatever I did. And it's not that he agreed with it or not. My father never showed me that negativity. If he ever had any in his heart or anything, he never showed it. He always showed only love to me and encouragement for whatever I did, be the best that I can be at it. And that's the way I lived.
And you mentioned, getting psychiatric help, but there was a moment that you found out that your psychiatrist was also in the same rehab at the time that you were. So tell us about that.
That was so crazy. Mm-hmm. It was a moment when they say, okay, what are you going to do when you get out? What's your care package going to be like? What are you going to do? How are you going to follow up? Are you going to see a psychiatrist and all those things? I mean, yes, I'm going to see one. Well, who are you going to see? And I'm like telling them who I'm going to see. And I'm wondering why I'm getting no okay on my, exit letter and all that stuff as far as who it is and all that stuff. And so I get out and I go up to visit someone a couple weeks later, and I'm walking down the hall and sitting in a pair of hospital pajamas is my psychiatrist on the patient phones. And I lost control of everything because it was just something I never thought I would see, especially when you're sharing you're just divulging everything and sharing everything to this person, and this person is in the exact same boat you are in.
And how can they help you?
It's like the pot calling the kettle black. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. But I have this question. I wanted to see if you'd be able to clear this up, because I just recently read this, and I want to know, were you surprised when Quincy Jones revealed to Vulture.com that your father and Marlon Brando actually hooked up sexually, and then when his ex-wife Jennifer confirmed it? Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I heard about it, and I think it's all a bunch of, I think, I can't say why Quincy did what he did. Mm-hmm. I can speak on why Jennifer did what she did, because I think she's a narcissist. Mm-hmm. I think that she wants to ride off of anything she can, any type of momentum she can, to stay relevant as far as who she thinks she is. I think that if my father, he was never ashamed of stuff he did, he would tell it if he did it, he told it. But it's awful strange to me how that if it's something that you've always known, because for one thing, you don't keep your mouth shut with things, why would you wait till someone else shared it to be the second person to share that? Because you're not that type of person. You're not the kind of person that would flow in on that, that bandwagon. You'd want to be the first one to mention that. Why would you wait till someone else did that in order for you to say that? That's what really nailed the head on the coffin as far as saying that this lady is not truthful, and she's going to say anything to keep story going, to keep herself in the name of the press and everything else, to keep people wanting to talk to her and all those things. And I think all that falls into play.
Okay, thank you for helping to clear that.
Did I clear that up?
Yeah, that was good. So thank you so much. And Richard, I want to say thank you. I know you got to go. I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. And I want to remind the audience to make sure that you pick up a copy of Richard's book, In a Prior Life. He is going in great details. I mean, there's so much that I wanted to talk to you about. I know we don't have enough time. If I had enough time, This is so juicy, your story. So I got to have you come back because we got to go into some of these details of the book that I think that people would really enjoy. You're not going to give them everything, but there's so much to talk about. There's so much meat in this book, and you have to get the book into to understand his life and what he's been through and how he came through it. So it's called In a Prior Life. So make sure you go pick it up at your local bookstore or even online. And again, Richard, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. And again, that was Mr. Richard Pryor Jr. His book is in stores now, In a Prior Life. He's talking about his story of his life and also his late father, Mr. Richard Pryor. So make sure you go and pick it up in stores right now. And thank you, Richard, for coming on the show.